welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, then welcome. My name is Maddie, and today I'll be sharing my December wrap-up. I will be talking about the books that I read in December. I ended up reading 9 books in December, right? 9 or 8. I think it was 8, which is surprising because I feel like the momentum of my reading has decreased this month, and I chalk that up to the fact that I've moved, and I feel like that has really thrown off my routine, so that's why I feel like I haven't been reading as much. But 8 books is still pretty good. That's pretty much the average I usually read in a month, so I'm still doing good even though I feel like I haven't been reading a lot. It's a really weird feeling, but I did read 8 books this month, and some were good, some were not so good, so I do feel like the quality of books I read this month isn't great as the quality of books I've read in other months, specifically the past few months. I have one 1-star book to talk about, which isn't great, and I have a few 3 stars. I think I have 1 or 2 5 stars, so my ratings were all over the place this month. But anywho, why don't we just get into the books that I read in December. So like I said in my December TBR, I plan to finish off the 𝑑𝑒𝑎𝑦 series by 𝐿𝚗𝚍 this month, and that is what I did. I finished off the whole series. I binge read all 3 of these books this month, and I started off December by reading all of these, so I'm going to talk about them individually. First, we're going to talk about the second book in the series, which is The Risk. And as a refresher, if you don't know what the series is about, it is a spin-off series of 𝐿𝚗𝚍's series, the Off-Campus series. And both of these series follows hockey players that are on this college team and their individual romances and stories. So in the Off-Campus series, we follow these 4 guys who live together on a house off campus, and they're all on this hockey team, and we follow their individual stories with each book. In the 𝑑𝑒𝑎𝑦 series, we also follow a group of guys who are on this hockey team, and one of them is on the rival hockey team, which is what this book is about. I'll get to that in a moment. But we also follow them and their individual stories, but the original guys from the Off-Campus series have now graduated, so this is like a new group of guys. Both series are really, really great, and I really enjoyed the 𝑑𝑒𝑎𝑦 series, specifically talking about this book. So this one is about Brenna. She was introduced in the first book, which is The Chase. We're following her story, and she starts off this fake relationship with this guy named Jake, who is on Harvard's hockey team, not on 𝑑𝑒𝑎𝑦's hockey teams, which makes a relationship between Brenna and Jake very taboo because they're supposed to be enemies since Jenna is from 𝑑𝑒𝑎𝑦. But as they start this fake dating thing going on, they do end up catching feelings for each other. Going into this one, I heard a lot of great things about The Risk. I heard that The Risk was a lot of readers' favorite book in this series, and I agree that it is really, really great. I definitely love it more than The Chase, which was the first book. The Chase was it was good, but I did have some minor issues with it. But with The Risk, I liked pretty much everything about it. I really enjoyed Brenna. She's a very strong character. She has a very feisty attitude, which I love. What I also love about her is that she's majoring in journalism, and she specifically wants to be a sports journalist. She loves hockey. Her dad is actually the coach of 𝑑𝑒𝑎𝑦's hockey team, which we see a lot of her dad throughout the Off-Campus series as well as this series, so it was really cool to find out more about his daughter. And because of that, she is really, really interested in hockey since she grew up around hockey. So she wants to be a sports journalist, and she actually gets an internship at a program for sports journalism. But it's really interesting because there's hardly any females for this specific field in journalism. And because of that, she faces a lot of ridicule because some people believe she cannot be a sports journalist because she is a female, but she proves them wrong. I love her determination to move forward in this field and progress in it and really go against the norm and prove that a female can be a sports journalist. It doesn't have to be just a job for men because sports doesn't have to be just a masculine thing. So I like how she broke the norm with that, and also related to her because she is into journalism and I am also someone who loves writing. So I really related to her on that. And talking about the romance in this book, I loved it. I really loved the progression of her relationship with Jake. I love Jake as a character. He came across very stoic at first, But I really grew to love him as he let loose and we got to see the real side of him. And I specifically love these two because they have such great banter together. Their dialogue is so hilarious. There were so many times where I was just laughing while they were conversating with each other. They said the most ridiculous things to each other sometimes, but it was so entertaining. And I love that this is a forbidden romance because they are supposed to be rivals, but they cannot help but just fall for each other. It was super, super sweet, and I was rooting for them the whole time to actually be together. I love this one. It's definitely one of my favorites in this series, and I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. And then I read the next book in the series, which is the play, and y'all, I was looking forward to this one so much because this one follows Hunter, and he's a character who is very prominent in the Off-Campus series, and I have loved him ever since the Off-Campus series. So when I found out he was getting his own book, I was so excited. This is the one book in this whole entire universe that I was looking forward to the most. So this one follows Hunter and Demi, and Hunter specifically has decided that he is going to become celibate. He's going to abstain from hookups, when before he was someone who partook in a lot of hookups. But he's doing this because one of his hookups cost him one of the hockey games. It cost them to lose for a specific reason, which I won't go into because you'll just have to find out for yourself why that is. But because of that, he's decided he's just going to become celibate. And that's really hard for him because he is a player. But he decides to do this, and he does a really good job at it. In fact, he really sticks to it, which makes me proud of him for being that determined to remain celibate, even though it's really hard for him. But it becomes really hard for him when he becomes attracted to Demi. It's kind of easy at first because she has a boyfriend, so that kind of eliminates the temptation to be with her. However, she does eventually end up breaking up with her boyfriend, which isn't a spoiler because it's in the synopsis, so that's why I'm saying it. But after that happens, he kind of gets more tempted to be with her. And obviously they start something up. I am so glad that this one did not disappoint because I was looking forward to reading about Hunter more. This one just lived up to my expectations. It was so, so, so good. The reason I really love Hunter is because he goes through the most character growth out of all the characters, I feel like, in this whole universe. Because when we're first introduced to him in the Off-Campus series, he is a freshman, and he's just like a little tiny thing. He's like such a baby in the Off-Campus series. So to see him at this point where he's so grown up and so confident, because we really get to see his confidence grow throughout this series, I just love his character development. It's so cool to see him in the original series where he was kind of like iffy about girls and not quite sure how to act around them. To where in the Prior You series, he is just the ladies' man. It's so entertaining and so cool to see, and that's why I love him. And he's also such a sweetheart and such a good friend. And I was specifically rooting for him in this book because in the first book, The Chase, he had feelings for Summer, who is the main girl in The Chase, but she started a relationship with someone else and he couldn't have her, and I felt really, really bad for him. So I was really rooting for him to find someone. And in this book, he does, obviously. And I really enjoyed Demi as well. She's a very strong and sweet girl, and I was really rooting for her to get out of her relationship because it was pretty obvious that her boyfriend was cheating on her. And so for that reason, I'm like, girl, you need to get out of this and find something better. So I was really rooting for her on that. And I really loved the relationship between her and Hunter. Just like Jake and Brenna, they also had a lot of great banter. They worked so well together. And they really supported each other, which I love. I love when two characters in a relationship can really be each other's support, root for them in their careers and all that, and that's what they did for each other. It was super sweet. This one also got a 5 out of 5 stars for me. I loved it. I'm so glad it wasn't disappointing because I was really looking forward to Hunter's story. I just adored it. And the last book in the series is The Dare, which was another good one. So this one is about Connor and Taylor. Connor was introduced in earlier books in the 𝑏𝑟𝑢 series. Taylor is a completely new character. But I was also looking forward to this one because I really enjoyed Connor from what we got of him throughout the 𝑏𝑟𝑢 series, and I only fell in love with him more throughout this book. So this one, like I said, follows Connor and Taylor is dared to try to hook up with Connor by her sorority. So she decides to do that, and she actually tells Connor, hey, my sorority girls dared me to hook up with you. Can we make this happen? And he agrees to that, and they kind of have a fake hookup to prove that she did hook up with him. And going forward, they decide to fake date so that she can stick it to her sorority girls that she can indeed get a boyfriend and get a hookup. And throughout their fake dating, they end up falling for each other. So this is another case of the fake dating trope. I feel like that trope is done a lot throughout this series, but in each case, in each book that it's done really well. So talking about Connor first, the reason I loved him is that he is actually from California. That's where he grew up. And then he moved to Massachusetts, where 𝑏𝑟𝑢 takes place. The reason I love that he's from California is because I also am from California. I live in Texas now, but I grew up in California. I lived there for 23 years. So because he talks about California a lot, I related to him on that. He's also a surfer boy, which it's kind of funny because I find that with a lot of characters, when they say they're from California, they're like surfer boys or girls. That's kind of like the stereotype. And I want to be like, you know what? Not all Californians grow up around the beach. Like, I specifically grew up in Northern California where there's very little beaches. Actually, I grew up in what's called the Central Valley, and it's basically surrounded by mountains. There's not a lot of beaches, so I kind of find it funny that a lot of characters are stereotyped as surfer boys or surfer girls when not everyone from California falls into that type. It's just kind of like a stereotype, but I didn't mind it. I thought it was really funny, and I thought him being a surfer boy just made him so much more charming and very, very quirky because he has a very quirky personality. And Taylor was also really fascinating. So she has a lot of trouble feeling comfortable in her skin because she is plus size, so she just lacks in confidence a lot. But throughout this book, she does grow to love herself more, and I appreciate Connor for helping her appreciate herself more. I thought that was very, very sweet. Also relatable for me because while I have lost weight, I used to be big as well, so I really related to her low confidence in the way she looked. And their romance was adorable. They had a lot of great chemistry together, and I enjoyed them falling for each other even though they're technically fake dating. And another thing I also liked in this book is that family is a huge part of this book, and the instances where families grow apart when a stepfather is introduced into the dynamic, because that's something that happens to Connor. So I liked seeing him deal with that. The biggest problem I did have with this book is that it does unfortunately fall into the miscommunication category. That's kind of what the climax of the book is based off of, and like I've said many a time, I hate miscommunications so much. I usually never like them. They never work out for me. They're always so frustrating. So because this book had that trope, I was not into it. But I liked everything else about it. I thought it was great. And I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. And that is it for the 𝑏𝑟𝑢 and Off-Campus series. I am finished with this series. It was very depressing when I finished off this last book because I love this series, but I am glad I finished it, and overall it was pretty good. And I will be doing a review on the Off-Campus series as well as this series because I think I'd like to talk about each and every book in even more detail, so I think I'm going to do that, and I'm looking forward to it. The next book I read, I am going to say I did DNF it, but I did count it as read because I read the first half of it. And so I felt like that was enough to count it as read, but I technically did not read all of it. There's a reason for that, and we'll get into it. But that book is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. And this book, if you don't know what it's about this guy and this girl, and they both work together, and they have this pretty spiteful relationship going on. They don't get along well together. And their relationship gets even more hostile when they are fighting for the same promotion at their job. Somewhere in the midst of it, they start growing feelings for each other. Basically the premise of this one. So in my December TBR, I mentioned that I did start this book a few years back, but I put it down because I just wasn't into it. I read the first few chapters and just it wasn't working for me. I couldn't really remember why I put it down at that time though, so that's why I picked it up again, just to see if I could get into it on the second time I tried to read it. That didn't end up happening, obviously, because I DNF'd it. And I remembered now, when I started this one again, the reason I DNF'd it the initial time is because the beginning of it is so info dumpy. Really, really bad info dump. And whenever a book info dumps on the first few pages, I'm guaranteed to DNF it because it's just information overload. So much so that I cannot process the information that's being given to me. So it's very frustrating when a book info dumps, and that was the case with this one. And another problem I had with this one, and I don't know if this was just me, but I felt like the dialogue between these two was so robotic. It didn't feel natural. It didn't feel like a conversation that two people would have. And I don't know how else to explain it beyond that, but the dialogue just felt choppy to me. And it made it even harder for me to really feel for these two and grow to like them as characters because they felt like robots to me in the way they spoke to each other. And overall, this one was just really boring. I just didn't see anything special about it, and that's really weird because this one has gotten so much hype. I feel like it's one of the most hyped romances in the past few years, but I just cannot get into it, and I really have a hard time seeing what others like about it. And I'm sorry if that's mean, but I don't get the hype with this one. I feel like there's so many other great romance books out there that I don't understand why this one gets as much hype as it does. Don't understand it at all. It also has a movie adaptation, and that's the reason why I wanted to pick this book up this month, because the movie just came out, but I have no interest in seeing the movie because I did not enjoy this. And I know you're probably like, why are you counting it as read when you only read the first half of it? I dedicated 3 whole days to trying to read this book. And that's why I'm counting it as read, because I feel like I wasted so much time just trying to read this one. I want to count it towards my goal, and I'm sorry if that's like breaking a rule, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. And because I DNF'd this one 50% of the way in, I gave it 1 out of 5 stars. Very sad rating, my only 1 star of the year, fortunately. So because I felt like the hating game kind of put me in a reading slump, which I did not want to happen. I could feel a reading slump coming on because of this book, and I did not want that to happen. So to fix that, I decided to reread a book that I knew I enjoyed in the past, and so for that reason, I picked up Forbidden by Tabitha Suzuma. I read this book in 2015, which was 6 years ago. It had been a hot minute since I last read this book. For that reason, I wasn't sure if I was going to like it upon reread because I read it so long ago, but that did not end up being the case. I still love this book as much as the first time I read it. So this one is about Loken and Maya, and they have a romance that has been brewing for quite some time. They've always felt this deep connection to each other, and it comes to a point where they finally act on those feelings, even though they've been trying to resist those feelings because they are brother and sister. And I know what you're thinking. That sounds so wrong, and I don't blame you for thinking that, but you will be surprised on how much you just start to feel for these two and their romance based on how their story unfolds. Because while their romance is taboo, they have never felt like brother and sister because they are forced to be parents to their younger siblings because both of their parents are absent. Their dad left the family and they haven't seen him in years, and their mom, she lives with them, but she is barely ever at the house. She's always going out, always going to see other guys. She comes home drunk most of the time, too drunk to take care of her own children. So for that reason, Maya and Loken, they have to step up and be the parents of their younger siblings. And they've been in these roles for years. And so because of the fact that they are basically parents, it forces Maya and Loken to be in a equal relationship to each other. They have more of a husband and wife relationship because they're parents to their younger siblings. And that is why it's really hard to believe that they are actually siblings, because they're on such equal level to each other. So as crazy as it sounds, it just makes sense why they would develop feelings for each other. But when it does come down to it, it is a taboo relationship. It is illegal, and that just only adds to the tension and angst of their romance. It's so hard because I do love these two together. It makes me feel really uncomfortable that I do love these two together, but they work so well together in a romantic sense. I just can't help it. They just have so much support for each other. They are always their shoulder to cry on. They lift each other up. It's so beautiful to see. And throughout this whole thing, I feel so bad for him because they have such a crappy home life. They are just thrust into a horrible situation. Because their parents are so absent, they have to look out for each other, and they're only teenagers. It's really, really sad. Loken especially, I love so much because he has social anxiety, really bad social anxiety. So much so that his panic attacks are so excruciating to watch. They make me feel for him so bad. And I also have really, really bad social anxiety. So because of that, I relate to him so much. So many times in this book, I just cried for him. Literally cried for him because I felt so bad for him. I was always sympathizing with him because of his anxiety, also because of his crappy home life and what he has to go through. He's kind of forced to be the man of the house, and that puts such a huge weight on his shoulders because he's one of the main ones in this family responsible for taking care of the kids, making sure they go to school on time, making their dinners, making their meals. It's so much on him, and there's so many moments in this book where he really breaks down because of all the responsibilities he has to take. And it's so unfair for him because he's only 17, and no 17-year-old should have to take on that much responsibility for caring for a family and all that. It makes me really feel for him. And Maya also is so great. She's so supportive of Loken. She's constantly there for him, helping him with the responsibilities of taking care of the house and the kids. She's just such a great support for him, and she's such a strong character on her own. She's incredibly strong. I love her persistence to keep going and grit through obstacles, because Lord knows these two have a lot of obstacles they have to go through, but she faces them head on. It just makes her a really strong character. And I will say with total confidence that I have never cried as hard in a book as I have with this one. It's gonna sound crazy, but I have never even cried this hard while reading 𝑓𝑟𝑢𝑖𝑡𝑠 𝐵𝑎𝑠k𝑒t. That is a bold statement, but I sobbed. It makes me want to cry thinking about it. I sobbed pretty much the last 20 pages of this book straight. Was just me uncontrollably sobbing. So much so that I put this down and I started worrying about myself. I had to tell myself, are you okay? Why are you crying so hard for a book? But I'm just gonna warn, oh my god, it's getting to me. The ending of this book is so incredibly sad. That's why I resisted rereading this book for so long, because I remembered the first time I read this book how much it absolutely destroyed me. I was hungover from this book with sadness for a long time after I first read it. That's why I resisted rereading it. But I did still really want to reread it because I remembered loving it. And I had the same reaction the second time I read it. I was depressed for several days after reading it. So I will warn you that this is a very, very, very depressing book based on its ending. Just be warned of that before going into it. But it really is such a great story. It'll make you think. It will give you a different perspective on sibling relationships. Not saying that sibling relationships are okay, I would not condone it in real life, but you will really understand why these characters grow together in a romantic sense, because it just makes sense. It's so crazy, but they just make sense together based off of the situation they're in. So I do recommend this one, but just be warned that there's a lot of triggers in this one. Triggers for anxiety, alcohol abuse because of their mother, physical abuse as well. I want to mention one more, but I would count it as a spoiler, so just look up triggers for this book if you are interested in reading it, just so I don't spoil anyone. But if those things don't bother you, then pick this one up because it'll make you think, and it's extremely, extremely powerful. I adore it. It's a 5 out of 5 stars for me. And next I read Bully by Penelope Douglas, which was my random TBR pick for December, where I pick a book at random from my Goodreads TBR from a random number generator, and this is the one that came up, so I was glad I got to my random TBR pick for this month. However, this one was mixed for me. I had some problems with it, a few good things about it, but overall it was disappointing because I really enjoy Penelope Douglas as an author, and I feel like this one just didn't really live up to my expectations. So this one is about Jared and Tate, and they used to be childhood best friends, but at some point Jared starts to turn on Tate and actually starts to bully her. He becomes her bully. Somewhere along the way, though, they do grow feelings for each other, and that's basically what the whole thing is about. So I've come to find out, specifically through this book, I just am not huge on bully romances because they just don't make sense to me. I just don't understand how you can fall in love with your bully. And Tate really has more of a physical attraction to Jared, even though he does bully her, but I get the fact that she's physically attracted to him because he's described as really handsome. But for her to actually just like grow feelings for him and start to fall in love with him while he's still bullying her is weird. I just don't get how you can fall in love with your harasser. It's a weird concept and it doesn't make any sense to me, and it makes me feel like I probably won't be picking up a lot more bully romances because I just don't think I'm into them. So for that reason, the romance kind of fell flat for me. I did like how Jared started to understand that bullying Tate was wrong, and he started to kind of stray away from that and respect her more. So for that reason, towards the end, the romance started to become a little okay with me, but it's the way that it started out with Tate falling for him while he was still bullying her that was weird and made no sense. But I think more than that, though, the biggest problem I had with this book was Tate herself. She was a bully herself. She was such a mean girl. She was constantly slut-shaming other girls, which I hate slut-shaming. Whenever a character slut-shames, I pretty much instantly will dislike that character because I hate slut-shaming that much. I don't think it's okay to judge someone based on the way they look, based on their love life, based on the way they act around guys, because there's nothing wrong with being promiscuous. As long as you're safe, as long as it's not hurting anyone, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And so when a character just judges someone for being more promiscuous than they maybe would have been, it's just so annoying because I'm like, just let that girl do what she wants. She's not hurting anyone. So I hated the fact that she was constantly slut-shaming other girls in her inner monologue. It was so annoying. She just had a really, really bad attitude. So I did not like her as a character at all. And if I don't like the main character, it is pretty much certain that I'm really not going to like the book. And the more I think about this one, the more I want to give it a 2 out of 5 stars. I did give it a 3 out of 5 stars, but it's really hard to find anything good about this one. I think the only good thing about it is that the plot was pretty engaging. It didn't move by quickly at a good pace. And I guess that's the great thing about it. But yeah, there was a lot of stuff I did not like about this one. So for that reason, I will not be continuing on with this series, which I'm sad because, like I said, I do enjoy Penelope Douglas, but this one did not work for me, sadly. And then I got to It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover, which was just stunning. so great, which is no surprise because it's Colleen Hoover. I loved it. So this one, I can't even talk about really what it's about because I feel like you have to go into this one knowing nothing about what it's about to really get the full experience with it. I guess the safest thing to do in order to describe this book is just to read the synopsis because it probably doesn't say a lot. So I'll go ahead and do that. So it says, Lily hasn't always had it easy, but that's never stopped her from working hard for the life she wants. She's come a long way from the small town in Maine where she grew up. She graduated from college, moved to Boston, and started her own business. So when she feels a spark with a gorgeous neurosurgeon named 𝑟𝑢𝑖𝑙 𝐼, everything in Lily's life suddenly seems almost too good to be true. 𝑟𝑢𝑖𝑙 is assertive, stubborn, maybe even a little arrogant. He's also sensitive, brilliant, and has a total soft spot for Lily, but 𝑟𝑢𝑖𝑙's complete aversion to relationships is disturbing. As questions about her new relationship overwhelm her, so do thoughts of Atlas Corrigan, her first love and a link to the past she left behind. He was her kindred spirit, her protector. When Atlas suddenly reappears, everything Lily has built with 𝑟𝑢𝑖𝑙 is threatened. That is basically what it's about. It involves falling in love with someone new, but it also has a second chance romance in it. But that's only the surface of what this book is actually about. Like, even the synopsis doesn't go into what this one is actually about. And you will find out for yourself exactly what this book really is about. And I will tell you it is heart-wrenching, heartbreaking, and will specifically make you think. With the topic at hand that is discussed in this book, it will give you another side of the story of someone who goes through this situation that you usually don't think about. And I love that we get to see the other side of the story of the person who goes through this sort of thing. And I know I'm being so vague, but I can't say anything more than that. But for that reason, like I said, this book will make you think. And I did give this one a 5 out of 5 stars. I will say, though, I don't usually give 0.5 stars, but I feel like this book is kind of a 4.5 stars for me because I found this one really predictable, which is crazy for me because it's really difficult for me to predict what happens in a book. For that reason, plot twists always get to me. I was able to predict so much of what went on in this book. And sadly, though, I feel like that took away the genuine experience that I'm supposed to get from this book. And it's for that reason that some of the, shocking moments of this book was kind of lost on me because I predicted some things and I ended up being right. So I feel like I was one of the unfortunate few who lost the true experience you're supposed to get from this book because I predicted some things. So I was really sad about that, but it didn't take away from everything else that's good about this book because it still brought the emotions out of me. I was crying a lot throughout this one because of how hard-hitting it is. And because it's so frustrating that I can't give you my full thoughts and feelings on this one due to abstaining from spoilers, I'm going to do a separate spoiler review on this one because I think this book calls for it. That way I can give my full thoughts for those of you who have read this book about it and what I thought of it, and I can express all the emotions I had while reading this one. So I'm going to do that. That should be happening pretty soon. I'm going to try to get it out as soon as possible, and I'm excited for it. So I did give this one 5 out of 5 stars. I recommend it. Please look up triggers for it. I can't mention them here because I will spoil you if I mention them, but look up triggers for it because this one's deep. It's not an easy read, so know what you're getting into before you read it, but I do highly recommend it. And the last one I read in December is Listen to Your Heart by Casey West. I gotta tell you, without fail, every time I look at this book, every time I picked it up to read it, in my head, I would be like, every single time. This book reminds me of that song because of the title. It was really funny. It's like that song would get stuck in my head based on this book. Anyway, this one was not on my December TBR, but I decided to pick it up because I realized that I had read so many depressing, hard-hitting, angsty books in a row that I felt like it was actually making me depressed. And because in general this has been a really hard month for me because of the fact that I've been moving. I've been going through a lot of emotions because of that, a lot of stress, and I feel like the books I have been reading was contributing to that stress because of the content matter in them. So I wanted to read something that was lighter, that didn't have any angst, any depressing stuff in it. And so for that reason, I was like, let me pick up a young adult contemporary romance, because young adult contemporary romances are primarily pretty light and not filled with so much depressing drama. So I was like, let me pick up a Casey West book, because I have really enjoyed her books in the past, and her books tend to be pretty positive, light, easy reads, and that's exactly what this one is. It was the kind of book that I needed. Did I like it? I did, and I didn't at the same time, so we'll get into that. So this one, it's about Kate, and she gets a gig as the host of her school's podcast. And in this podcast, it is her job to give out advice to other students. So a frequent caller comes in, and he is anonymous. And he specifically keeps asking for advice on how to pursue his crush. So Kate suspects that this guy is Diego, which is a guy she knows. And she specifically knows that her best friend has a crush on him. And she suspects that Diego is actually asking for advice on how to pursue her best friend. So she helped what she assumes is Diego who's calling on how to get with her best friend, but in the process she actually starts falling in love with him, which makes helping him get with her best friend even harder. So I actually enjoyed the main character, which is Kate. I found her relatable because she is really socially awkward and she has a hard time opening herself up to others. But because she is forced to be the host of her school's podcast, that puts her on the spot to have to express herself throughout this podcast. And it forces her to have to talk to other people. And she really grows into this role, becomes comfortable with it. So she really grows as a character and how she's able to confidently express herself more to people. So I enjoyed seeing that. The romance really did not work for me though. Reasons for that is that we are introduced to a love triangle in this book. Kate does have feelings for Diego, but there's also this other guy in the midst who you kind of start to think is also going to start something up with her. And going into this book, I did not read the synopsis for it. I had no idea what I was getting into before reading this, and so for that reason I wasn't sure who the actual love interest was. I didn't know if it was going to be Diego or this other guy, and I actually was rooting for her to be with the other guy more, which is really weird because usually I'm always rooting for the main romance. But I was like, I want her to be with this other guy. The setup for their relationship had so much potential. Reason being is that they are actually enemies. Their families are rivals. So they had so much potential to start off to be a great enemies to lovers romance. But the book doesn't really go in that direction. And I just wish it would have went in that direction because there was so much potential there to build such a great romance based off of the relationship between these two, but that didn't really end up happening. And so for that reason I had a hard time rooting for Diego and Kate because I was like, I kind of wish it would go in this direction, not the direction it went in. So that was sad, especially because I have enjoyed Casey West's books in the past. So I want to love all of her books, but this one was just, not great. It was fine, but not great. I did give it 3 out of 5 stars. And I will mention the book I'm currently reading. As of today, it is December 30th, and I'm probably going to finish this one today, so I'm thinking it's going to also be a book that I will have read in December, but I didn't end up finishing it on time before this wrap up. So I will mention my full thoughts on it during my January wrap up, but that is The Fire Between High and Low by Brittany C. Cherry. This is the second book in the Elements series. The first book is The Air He Breathes, and I really enjoyed that book, so I have been looking forward to getting back into this series with the next one. This one has been going so well. I am pretty much halfway through it, and I've enjoyed the majority of it. And the premise of this one, it is about this guy and this girl, and they start up this friendship. They've been friends for 2 years, and past the 2-year mark, they start to grow feelings for each other. They start up this relationship, but there's a lot of obstacles in the relationship that happens. There's a big event that happens that really really draws them apart. And the guy, which is Logan, ends up moving out of town, and they spend some time apart, but he ends up coming back into town. And so him and Alyssa, which is the girl, they are forced to kind of reconcile, and that's basically where I'm at right now. It is so great. This one is filled with so much drama, which I don't mind because I absolutely love drama, but it is very, very, very drama based. There is so much angst. I really love Logan. This poor dude, he has just so many terrible things happening to him constantly. This guy cannot get a break. I feel so bad for him. I just want at least one good thing to happen to him, and it never happens. So I'm so hoping that as I get more into the book, positive things start happening to him, because this guy needs a break. It's really hard to watch. But yeah, I'm looking forward to finishing this one. I'll let you know my full thoughts on it next month during my January wrap up, and I hope the rest of the book is great. And that is it. Let me see how long I've been recording. A full last hour! I swear, every single time it's hard for me to film my wrap-ups in less than an hour. I just always have so much to say. So again, I hope you guys don't mind this long video. Let me know if you've read any of these books, and also let me know the books that you read in December. I would really love to know. And if you liked the video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more anime-related videos and book-related videos. And if you'd like to follow me on social media, those links will be in the description box. I do upload every Tuesdays and Saturdays. And with that said, I'll see you in my next one. Bye!